Happy Monday, everybody. All right, last week we had some really big news, at least with finance geeks, especially Greg and I. Warren Buffett announced he's retiring. Now, this isn't just the end of an era. This is an end of the era, especially in terms of Berkshire Hathaway. He's been running Berkshire Hathaway for over 50 years. He's 94 years old. Frankly, Greg and I are surprised he's lasted this long, but he loves it and he has nothing else to do and doesn't want to do anything else anyway. But 94, he felt like it's a good time to pass on the baton. And I don't know if this has anything to do with it, but his business partner, famously blunt business partner, Charlie Munger, passed away last year. He was 99. Both of them were in the saddle until the very end, right? Well, as you know, Greg and I have a lot of respect for Warren Buffett. Now, we don't love everything he does. He's made decisions or public statements that we completely disagree with. But when you look at his track record, he invests based on value. He likes to buy low, sell high. He's famously said to be scared when others are greedy, but to be greedy when others are scared as an investor. These are mantras that, Greg and I have tried to apply, and a lot of financial advisors do the same thing. Here's the thing, and this is what I wanted to point out. I was watching his last speech at his annual shareholder meeting. They call it the Woodstock for Capitalists. It's in Omaha, Nebraska, and thousands of people descend on the city, and they just want to listen to the Oracle of Omaha. Well, I listened to his speech, and he has a lot of good nuggets. But one point stood out to me because it's something that Greg and I have been screaming from the rooftops, and it's the fragility of currency. And what he was saying in this little clip of a long presentation is that one of his biggest concerns as an investor is investing in any kind of asset tied to a currency that is unstable. And he points out the US dollar. And he said that's the biggest concern for the dollar. And then going back, I remember Charlie Munger in the last 2 or 3 years said, yeah, it's only a matter of time before the dollar goes down to zero value. That means the dollar won't be able to buy anything. And Munger said it's only a matter of time. And so with Warren Buffett talking about this, and by the way, I'll put a link to it's like a 2-minute clip where he talks about the danger of currencies being devalued. And he said it's not just the United States. He said it's the tendency of every government ever since the beginning of time, whether they were shaving the corners off of gold coins or now where they just print a lot of extra dollars. The tendency of a government is to debase their own currency, and it makes people wealthy. It makes the people who know better wealthy, and that's part of the tendency. So he's not, casting aspersions against the United States, but he says it's a concern. All right, so then what I did is I went to Grok, my AI engine of choice, and I typed in, I said, give me a table. Go from 1913, World War I, and show me what $100 would be worth every decade after 2013 up till today. So I printed it up for you, and here it is. It's one of our famous high-tech charts here. But we start out at 1913, and you can see that the purchasing power is $100. A decade later, $57. A decade later, 1933, right before World War I, $76. 1943, $57. Goes down. So every decade, the dollar is buying less and less, right? Then, let's see, 1973, that was a big one, $22. 1983, it dropped a lot. It was $10 at that point. 2023, that's 110 years later, is basically 3% of the original value, $3.25. And so today, 2025, that's $3.10. You can see also in this table that what Grok has done is created on this table what the CPI was. That's the inflation index, what the CPI was for each of those decades. Now, you gotta assume that those CPI rates are accurate, which Greg and I question. We think they are typically higher than what the government's reporting, but we'll just take it at face value. Given those rates, $100. So let's say you had put $100 under your mattress back in 1913 and you pulled it out today, it would only buy $3, the equivalent of their earnings back in 1913. It would buy $3 worth of goods today, which is why Greg and I talk about you don't want to keep your money invested in dollars. And what Greg was talking about with the shadow banking, for at the very least, make sure you've got it below the FDIC limit. But even then, it's not a long-term strategy. You need it to buy groceries and pay your bills, but that's about as good as it can be used for. Otherwise, you need long-term strategies, which is what we do for you. Okay, I'm going to stop with one more comment. Scott Bessent last week made a public meeting, or he had a public meeting, and he said that he actually said that the U.S. markets are anti-fragile. Well, there's an author, and we've talked about him before, Nassim Taleb. He's a famous fund manager. He's the author of the book, The Black Swan. He actually tweeted out or X'd out saying, markets are never as fragile as when the government is saying they're anti-fragile. I just want to leave that out for you guys. All right. With that, you all have a great week. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.